I were to start a business in 2026 all over again, here are a few things I'd focus on. Firstly, a lot of people, when they just generally start a new business, I'm talking completely new venture or even starting another business after a failed venture, they get bogged down with a lot of the bullshit. And by bullshit, I mean LLC, admin work, accounting, QuickBooks, website, branding, logos, Instagram posts. Just those 10 things alone can take you months and waste your valuable time. I would not get bogged down with all of that. Not saying they're important, but in reality, they don't really matter. What matters, simply put, especially when starting out, is gaining momentum. And that comes down to customers. Because if you think about it, business is really just money in. So I'd work on a front end model. What I mean by front end is you need to focus on sales and lead generation. Well, really, those are both the same things. They go in the same circumference, but sales, getting customers as fast as possible. It's going to build momentum, and it's going to allow you to afford better branding, better marketing, better websites. It all goes in a loop, but it starts with the sales. So I would make sure that whatever industry I position myself in, it'd be front heavy and it'd focus heavily on sales at the start. Doesn't necessarily have to be the best product, and the branding doesn't need to be the best, but we need to have the best sales, and we need to be actively attacking that with the most aggression, because sales is what matters, especially at the start, and generally it's the most important thing in sales. Now, the second thing I would do is, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, a lot of people try and develop an app, try and develop a software, they make it too hard for themselves. I would do two things. Either look at an industry or a business that's already working and it's expensive but people pay for. Or secondly, find an expensive problem to solve. Now, an expensive problem to solve sounds a bit hard, but it could be as simple as, let's say you're in construction, a verification software for contractors, because a big pain point in the construction industry or even home improvement industry is having an unverified, unlicensed expert come view your house and then steal your money. That's an expensive problem which you can solve. And then for option one, it could be like something very niche, like what's very common is custom framing shops, like picture framing shops. They make a lot of money and they're in the art industry, and they're old, they're hundreds of years old. And these shops make a lot of money because they work with designers and galleries. You don't need to reinvent the wheel if your focus is generating money. So pick either one of those two. Now, the third thing goes back to really step one, is you want to now focus on sales. And I've talked about this in our previous videos. You ideally want to pick one sales channel. That doesn't mean you just stick to that sales channel, but that's going to become your main bread and butter. And you want to build that up and attack it as aggressively as possible. So for example, if you are a handyman company, a sales channel you could pick is cold calling. And you would stick with cold calling until you perfect it. And then obviously do things like attend networking events on the side and build your reputation up. But your main bread and butter would be cold calling. You stick with cold calling and it will work. Pick a main channel and then stick with it, optimize it. I'm talking KPIs every week, track conversion rates, track dial rates, track pickup rates, track it all, and then adjust it actively. So once you pick a channel, go full out in it, systemize it, and then outsource it. And you just got to keep scaling it. So you got to scale what works. Do not scale what does not work. So once you get your first client or your second client from, let's say, cold calling, which is the example I just gave, do not jump over the ads. Do not jump over to influencers. Do not make a crazy jump over. Double down. So in the case of cold calling, get an appointment setter or get a cold caller, hire them, so then you don't have to work on the business. You can work on the business, you don't have to work in the business. And then you can optimize it more and then get 2 cold callers, 3 cold callers, 4 cold callers. But in order to scale like that, you got to have the systems, and that's where we come with step 5. Step 5 is really just systemizing everything. And what I mean by a system is just basically anything you can do that's repeatable. And what I mean by repeatable is you do it multiple times a day. You just write it down in a chronological order and explain each step, and that's what's called a standard operating procedure. So what that allows you to do is, once you create a standard operating procedure for a task, you can then give it to someone else, and then they can do it, and then you can focus on what's more important, which is sales.